Well, good evening. Welcome, everyone. Welcome to our Fireside Chat, Caregiver Essentials, advocating for your loved one every step of the way. I am Jenny Woodworth, a licensed independent social worker and the Director of Programs for Courage to Caregivers. And I'm so glad to be here tonight. This topic is important to our work here at Courage to Caregivers because we believe people with lived experience must be involved in policy decisions that affect their lives. Advocacy can be on a micro, meso, or macro scale. And we also believe that caregivers can and should advocate for themselves as well in their caregiver role. Advocacy can feel hard, but we are hoping that tonight's event will challenge, inspire, and motivate you to advocate for yourself and your loved one every step of the way during their recovery. Before we get started, I want to do a brief bit of housekeeping. We are recording this program tonight, but only our presenters will be recorded. We won't have time for live questions, or we may, but if you have follow-up questions, feel free to add them to the chat. We'll be monitoring that, and they will be deleted following the broadcast. Or if you'd like to ask a question anonymously, you may text us during this broadcast at 216-536-7699. Know that we did receive questions submitted prior to this event, and we will include as many as we can. We weren't able to include all of them in this presentation due to time limitations. You may receive follow-up information that will hopefully assist you further. Let me take a minute to tell you a little bit about what Courage to Caregivers does to support family caregivers. We are a nonprofit located in Northeast Ohio, but with a national reach. Our mission is to provide hope, support, and courage to caregivers and loved ones of those living with mental illness. We focus exclusively on the caregiver and see ourselves in the caregiver burnout prevention business. We offer 3 programs, currently at no cost to the participants. All programs are provided virtually. Again, we are now supporting caregivers nationwide. Our one-to-one caregiver peer support program matches caregivers in need with trained volunteers who have experience with someone caring for someone living with mental illness. If you feel compelled to help other caregivers, if this looks like part of your advocacy, I always need volunteers for this program. Our weekly coaching groups are co-facilitated by both a licensed social worker or counselor and a trained peer specialist. Our coaching group model provides essential tools to build a caregiver's resilience. While staffed by professional therapists, we do not provide therapy or counseling. These are like coaching sessions, hence the name. Breathing meditation facilitators are credentialed yoga instructors that incorporate breathing techniques, light yoga movement, guided meditation, and a deep rest, typically a yoga nidra. They do our breathing meditation programming. Tonight we have a speaker named Joan, who is with the MAC, the Mental Health and Addiction Advocacy Coalition. They foster education and awareness of mental health and addiction issues while advocating for public policies and strategies that support effective, well-funded services, systems, and supports for those in need, resulting in stronger Ohio communities. The MAC is a place where diverse interests come together, speak with a common voice, and work towards guaranteeing access to quality services and supports for individuals with mental health and addiction disorder. Katie is joining us from NAMI Greater Cle. So they're Cleveland. Here in Cleveland, we do a CLE, which often is, I say Cle, it means Cleveland, mission. Their mission is dedicated to empowering those living with mental illness and their family members to achieve a better quality of life by providing education, support, information, and referral and advocacy. So I would love to bring them out here. Let's introduce our panelists for the evening. Hi, Joan. Hi, Katie. So Joan is the executive director of the MAC and has served in that position since February 2003. The MAC is comprised of over 135 organizations around the state of Ohio, including Courage to Caregivers and other behavioral health agencies serving both children and adults, health and human service agencies, faith-based community, government and advocacy organizations, the corporate arena, and major medical institutions. Their agency fosters education and awareness of mental health and addiction issues while advocating for public policies and strategies that support effective, well-funded, oh, I said that because that's part of their mission. There's effective and well-funded services for those in need. As the executive director, Ms. Englund, am I saying that right? Ms. Englund has advocated extensively at the local and state levels regarding behavioral health public policy issues. Joan obtained both her Bachelor's of Science degree in social work and her law degree from Ohio State University. And we have Katie. Yes, thank you. The kids were just doing that. Katie Jenkins is a passionate mental health advocate, experienced public servant, lifelong student, and mother. With over 20 years of service in the mental health field, Katie's journey is marked by her unwavering commitment to the well-being of individuals facing mental health challenges. Her extensive background includes roles spanning various capacities with the mental health sector. Katie has a guiding principle rooted in empathy, compassion, and the belief that everyone deserves a high-level quality of life. Katie looks forward to continuing her mission of advocating for mental health awareness and improving access to mental health services. She's doing that by graduating with a social work master's degree in May 2024 and looking forward after that to pursuing her LSW licensure. She currently holds a Bachelor of Arts in Environmental Studies, Master of Public Administration, and a Chemical Dependency Counselor Assistant license. Wow, you two are awesome. Thank you for being here. And we're going to go ahead and get started. So again, welcome to you both. As I was putting questions together for this, I was thinking, why don't we start with some defining advocacy? So how do you define advocacy both in your professional experience, and if you don't mind, if you have any personal ideas or experiences with advocacy, if you could share those as well. And I'm going to start with Joan and then volley over to Katie. So Joan, please.
So I would define advocacy as an expression that when I heard it years ago, it didn't make any sense to me. I just didn't understand it. And the expression is speaking truth to power. Yeah. And for years I would hear people say that, and I thought, I don't understand why you wouldn't speak truth. What does that mean to speak truth? Who is the power? What are we talking about here? And that's what advocacy is. It is speaking the truth, your truth, a truth, whatever the truth is, to those in power. And in our world, in the Max world, those in power can be different groups. It can be, in certain situations, the general public. For example, if we're trying to get a levy passed, we're speaking truth to the general public because we want for them to vote in support of this levy. In other cases, truth to the power may be a public official. Maybe it's the governor, maybe it's a state or a state senator or a state representative or others. A public official who has the power to make a difference on behalf of people with mental health and addiction disorders. And in some cases, the power is neither of those. It's another stakeholder. Maybe it's your local library. Maybe it's your local school, for example. Maybe it's your local house of worship. You are speaking truth to that power because they have the power in that situation. When it comes to my personal experience, I have a lot of experience personally as an advocate. And that ranges for me from everything from marching on Washington to marching in Columbus to marching in Cleveland to putting money where my mouth is on causes that are important to me, and a whole host of other things that kind of range in between there. Writing letters to people in power, making calls, doing all kinds of things. So for me personally is very similar to what we do as an organization. I just speak my own truth to the people in power.
Excellent. Speaking truth to power. I love that definition. Katie, would you define advocacy in your professional experience and your personal experience as well?
Yeah, so everything that Joan said, let me co-sign that first.
Okay, awesome.
But also, and I think this is along the lines of what Courage to Caregivers supports, for NAMI, one of the ways that we teach advocacy is to the individuals that we serve. And that advocacy can be one-on-one. It's advocating for your prescriber to to hear you. It's advocating for your insurance to cover services that you really need. It's advocating with your family member to provide the services or boundaries that are necessary for your wellness. So it also includes that very, very individual one-to-one level. And I also think a lot of what we do around advocacy is just making people aware. I think we get to ring the alarm, and then organizations like Jones go out and march, but just making people aware so that they can speak up, so that they can speak their truth.
Excellent. So I'd invite both of you, starting with Katie now, to tell me a little bit about your favorite part of your work with advocacy, and maybe just a little bit less about your least favorite part of the work. Katie, tell me more.
Oh Lord, there's so many amazing parts. I think, because I do tend to do a lot on that one-to-one level, I think the thing that is the most beautiful is seeing families obtain a different level of function because they've taken the steps to, set the boundaries, find the services, get on the road to recovery and wellness, and really just seeing a person go from, I worked with somebody at one point who was going from homelessness and had lost custody of her child, and had gained the strength and the ability till she was living independently in a home that she was paying for and regained custody of her children. And you're like, there is nothing better than that. That is, just seeing somebody's life truly changed because of the work that every one of us do. I don't know that there's anything I think, writing letters. I don't love writing letters, but I get it. It's a part.
Yeah. I love when people give a good template, like for letter writing, like, hey,
I'll sign it.
That's a beautiful part. So that's a reframing of your least favorite part.
Yeah.
Joan, what do you like what's your favorite part about advocating, and maybe a little bit about your least favorite part?
I love the people part, right? And for me, it's when I can engage in advocacy and that one-on-one, kind of toe-to-toe, talking with another human about what their beliefs are, what their thoughts are, what my beliefs are, what our thoughts are, and trying to find a way to get all of us across the same finish line together. It's a personal challenge for me. It's also the lawyer in me that likes that kind of that kind of a challenge, that one-on-one experience. But I find that incredibly gratifying. So that advocacy is what helps me get through the stuff that ain't so great. And I do have some things that I don't like. I don't like the audit. I don't like preparing the 990. I don't like preparing minutes. I don't like trying to organize my office. I don't like any of that administrative stuff. I want to be out in the field advocating. I don't want to be back. I'm same with you, Katie, writing letters, but that's even above like the audit and the 990 and really writing the minute for a 4.5-hour board meeting. None of that stuff is fun. Reality is all of that stuff has to be done though.
Yeah.
And before we hopped on here, some of us were talking about that's also life at a small nonprofit, right? You are chief cook and bottle washer. I was punching out 900 name tags today, along with, other parts of our team. You do it all when you're a small nonprofit. You have to be able to keep the wheels on the bus rolling. And that means you do the stuff that is immensely gratifying and so much fun, frankly, in our job. But you got to do the crummy stuff too.
Yeah. I think caregivers on this webinar can totally relate to that, the fun and the crummy. And I think another thing I like about advocacy is some people are letter writers and they have such passion and eloquence, and we can let them do that while some of us are marching. I think that's beautiful. There's a place for everyone as we advocate for change and reducing stigma and all of those things. So let's get to it. I'm going to just put this one out there. So I've heard often that recently the system is broken, kind of this overarching statement. And this can really make caregivers, people like us, feel hopeless. I was hoping that the two of you could address that. Like, how can caregivers heal and repair a broken system? Again, that's a big job. But I wonder if you could speak to this whole system is broken piece. Joan, and then Katie.
So first of all, I want to say it breaks my heart to think of caregivers being hopeless.
Same.
It caregivers deal with, I can hear my voice wavering so much, and I know that. And to then also be faced with a personal feeling of hopelessness seems like more than anyone should have to bear. So I want to put that out there. I also want to say, however, that and Governor DeWine was the first one. He says this as well. He's the governor in the state of Ohio. For those of you that aren't in Ohio, the system was never built. That, I think, is the problem.
That's a really good way to put it.
And when years ago we did the right thing, taking people out of the institutions, it was absolutely the right thing to get them care in the community and embed them in the community with the supports and the services they needed. We moved them out of the hospitals and institutions, but we failed to realize the other part of that equation, which was building that community system to support individuals with mental health disorders and addiction disorders. And our failure to build that system over the years has meant that we have piecemealed this stuff. We know that there's never been enough money, prioritization, anything put into the behavioral health system. So we built what we could. We researched what we could. We did what we could with, frankly, spit and duct tape through the years. And we built the system, quote unquote, that we've got right now. There are excellent pieces of that system right now. There are care providers on the front lines doing the absolute best they can on behalf of the people they serve. And there are people like Courage to Caregivers and NAMI Greater Cleveland. You guys are rock stars. You're doing incredible things for the people you serve. Those are good parts of the system that I would argue your shops aren't broken. So these providers, they're not broken either. We just don't have that entire continuum of care, not only in the state of Ohio, but across the country, that we need to be able to serve people with behavioral health disorders. You think about what we've got from a hospital system or our medical system for physical care, right? It's so much more complex, and it's a much more richly woven fabric than what we have for behavioral health. That's what we've got. We just never built it. And now it's our job to build it so that we can provide everything that we need to provide.
I love that reframe. It was never built. Thank you. Katie, anything you'd like to add to this?
Yeah, I would just echo what Joan said, in that we have some amazing providers in our communities. Northeast Ohio is rich in resources and individuals who truly care and are passionate and they're willing to step into that system to do the work that needs to be done to create that continuum. And so I think it's important to focus, that there's room for improvement. Definitely, but that doesn't mean we throw the baby out with the bathwater.
Great. Thank you both. Wonder, one of the things we talk about a lot in both groups and kind of our general language at Courage to Caregivers are small ways, micro ways you can grow, that you can take care of yourself, all of those things. So I guess I'd invite you now to talk a little bit about, small ways caregivers can advocate for macro level social change or stigma reduction. And Joan, specifically, I'm going to start with you. You'd mentioned when we met that you were doing some research specifically in racial equity. So if you have anything to add with that too. But right now we're talking about small ways to advocate, mostly on a macro level. So Joan.
So thanks, Jenny. We are involved in some important research, and I will start there. Our MAC is partnering with Ohio University, Multi-Ethnic Advocates for Cultural Competence, and I would say most importantly, Central State. which in Ohio is one of 2 HBCUs in the state of Ohio, and they are the public one. Our 4 entities have been partnering now for close to 2 years to undertake research on racial and ethnic inequity in Ohio's community behavioral health system. We've now released 2 out of 4 reports on the topic. The first one was an overview. What do we mean by health equity? Why are we talking about that? What's a social determinant of health? Many people, I'm sure all of the folks that are watching this, know what those things are, but we didn't want to make any assumptions, and we wanted to level set as to what we're talking about and encourage curiosity on the reports. Our second report, though, and I think this is an area where caregivers can take micro steps to help with the macro picture. Our second report focuses on workforce. I have said for 20 years since I've been doing this job that our workforce does not look like the people we serve and does not represent what the state of Ohio looks like. But if you had even just pushed me a little bit, I could not have told you, are we talking about social workers or nurses or pharmacists or doctors or peer support providers? Who are we talking about? And if we're talking about social workers, are you talking about Joan, LISW, LSW? How about in nursing, LPN, what are we talking about? We don't have that in the state of Ohio. Yet we're doing all of these things rightfully, but we're doing all of these things to increase the workforce, increase the diversity of the workforce. But we have no baseline data that's out there to see, oh, we're doing it in the right place, or we don't need to do it over here. Why are we doing it in this area? So that was the goal of this entire research project. Our second report does that, looks at the behavioral health professionals in the state of Ohio and lays that baseline data. What we know is that by and large, our workforce, again, it proved us right as to what we thought, is that our behavioral health workforce doesn't look like the people in the state of Ohio. So now we know where we can target. But part of the biggest problems facing behavioral health right now is recruiting people into the workforce and keeping them in the workforce. We have a series of recommendations in that report on what various folks can be doing. But for caregivers, I think there's a couple of really important ways that they can play a role. Caregivers know firsthand the value of good clinicians. They know how much value good clinicians and peer supporters, for example, can provide to a family. Talking about that value proposition is such a critical role. Our behavioral health workforce has been so historically undervalued and stigmatized. We have to change that narrative. We have to talk about how incredible behavioral health care workers are, how much value they provide, how they help people, some of the stories we've heard, how they help people thrive, not just survive, but thrive in their local communities, and why you should want to become a behavioral health care professional. If caregivers can share that story broadly in the community with your local education systems, we have to begin instilling that value proposition in like middle school, having that conversation there so that when kids get to high school and beyond, potentially, they already want to be in the behavioral health workforce because they've heard about how valuable it is, how much they can contribute, and how they can make a meaningful difference in the lives of people that they know and people that they don't know. They can make a real difference. So I think that's one example of a small thing that, and it's not that small, it's huge, that a caregiver could do that could have huge ripple effects down the road.
Excellent. I love that. Katie, small ways for advocacy for caregivers.
So getting back to what we do at NAMI, I think one of the most valuable ways that anybody can advocate is by sharing their story. And Joan talked about this. You know, it can help people become more interested in the field. It can help people feel more valued in the field, but also it's going to tear down those walls of stigma. It's going to tear down those walls of othering that we have in mental health. That, you know, if you walked around with a broken leg for weeks, you'd get it. Somebody would be like, why aren't you getting this treated? But with mental health, you know, there's so many of us walking around with broken legs, and we think we're alone. And so just simply by saying who you are and what your experience has been, and it doesn't have to be like dumping your whole soul on a table. You know, it can be something so simple as, you know, I myself have anxiety and depression, and I've been very blessed in my experience because I've been able to find, you know, prescribers who have helped me, and I haven't had a ton of issues with finding the appropriate medications to support me. And I have family and everybody else that's like so supportive. And I work in this field. And, you know, sharing that with people gives power to what is so many of our truth. I mean, before the pandemic, it was 1 in 5 individuals have a mental health condition. Now I would argue it's 1 in 4, if not more, because I can guarantee you a large majority of the people who went through the pandemic had feelings of isolation, hopelessness, helplessness, depression, anxiety. I mean, who didn't have anxiety during that whole process? And so it might not be an ongoing condition that you're going to struggle with for the rest of your life, but it's something you can relate to. And so let's all just be honest. You know, let's just say this is what it is. And that starts breaking down those barriers that allows healthcare to incorporate mental health and allows mental health to be elevated to that I think you said interwoven tapestry that our medical care currently has. It allows us to integrate it into every day.
But it starts with that stigma reduction. Yeah.
Yes.
So
we're all suffering.
Yeah, one way or another. It's true. I mean, so there's truth in these stories. There's power in these stories. Thank you. And I think another thing, Christy and I, we did Christy's our executive director. We did a presentation today at a local agency, and we were talking about asking for help as a helper. And I think that's such a hard thing that for caregivers and professional caregivers, so unpaid family caregivers and professional caregivers to do. So kudos to you, Katie, for reaching out for help. And I would encourage anyone watching this to be brave and ask for help. You don't always have to be strong. There's someone that can support you.
Absolutely. In my own little soapbox, you don't have to start with a psychiatrist and a psychologist. Your primary physician is the absolute perfect place to start. And that's easy. It's somebody you've already, you know, created care with, that they know you, that you hopefully feel comfortable talking to. Start with that. And if your needs rise beyond that, they'll get you in the right place.
Yeah. I love your little soapbox. Thank you.
Thank you.
Katie, I'm going to continue with you for a second. So we are very Ohio-centric on this screen. We are Cleveland-centric even, but Ohio-centric. But we do have a national audience watching this talk. And I wonder, and we are going to share our newsletter. Our last month's newsletter has a bunch of resources for advocacy in a national scope. But Katie, can you talk about national organizations that our audience could connect with to support their own advocacy efforts, and maybe even organizations that specialize in children under 18 and then adults, those people over 18? So I'll start with Katie, and Joan, I'll volley to you.
Yeah, so I know Joan's going to remember some of the ones that I'm going to forget, so I'm counting on you. Obviously, NAMI. You know what I mean? We are the National Alliance on Mental Illness, and we started as families around a kitchen table. And so we have a national organization. We have 50 state organizations, and we have local affiliates. Ohio's got 34 affiliates, which is pretty amazing. Wow. We are a very rich community or state when it comes to NAMI. But, you know, they are working diligently in the State House. They're working diligently on Capitol Hill, and using their voices to help advance some of the things that we know we need in the field. And they also come out with a lot of really amazing like press releases and opportunities for advocacy. They do form letters so that it's really easy to go in and send something to your representative. So I just, I'm partial to that organization. But Mental Health America is another one that works kind of in tandem with NAMI. They have a very good working relationship and has a very similar mission. And so that's another really great location for information. Joan, what are other ones that I'm missing?
So a couple of other ones that spring to mind for me are a treatment advocacy center, which does some really terrific advocacy work in this space. Also, Fountain House and the kind of national affiliation of clubhouses. Fountain House is I think the oldest one in New York. Yep, and located in New York City. But they do some tremendous work as well. And then the Center for Behavioral Health Leadership also does some really great work. It's a membership organization, but many of their resources on their website are available for free viewing as well. So those are some of the groups. And then you can also get really terrific information on mental health and substance abuse and other addiction disorders on places like SAMHSA. So NIH, Kaiser Family Foundation. There's a lot of good information out there. So depending on what you're exactly looking for. And I know that if folks have questions regarding their local states and other more targeted resources, either locally at the state level, I must speak for you, Katie. I know you're going to see our contact information at some point here. Reach out to us. I am happy to brainstorm with you about what might be in your state, resources you might want to think about, people that we can connect you with that might help you get the answer to the question, the specific question that you have, because everybody's got a slightly different situation and a slightly different question. And so tailoring kind of the response back is something that I will offer to do with anybody. Happy to be helpful.
Thank you.
And I realized I thought of it. So like American Academy of Child and Pediatrician, and like APA Psychologists Association. NASW is another really great one. That they are constantly releasing information about legislature throughout the country.
That's wonderful. I was looking in preparation for this chat. There's a Parent and Professional Advocacy League. It is Massachusetts based, but it is ppal.net. It was an interesting resource that as I was prepping, I found. So that's another, again, it's Google is your friend on this, but also having professionals, thank you, Joan, for your offer, to help you filter Google is always helpful. I just want to point out, Katie, as you're talking about NAMI, around a kitchen table, I love that grassroots aspect. And I think that when I went into social work, that was one of the things that really appealed to me, was that like good old roll up your sleeves advocacy that isn't, doing audits and things like that. So I love NAMI's history. I knew it, but thanks for refreshing my memory on that. Let's see. So should we talk about next? Oh, I get it. We're going to talk a little bit about self-advocacy. So part of our advocacy curriculum here at Courage to Caregivers focuses on that idea of self-advocacy. So how do you encourage caregivers to advocate for themselves and their needs on that micro level? And Katie and Joan, I know that's less of how you work, but Katie, we'll start with you. And Joan, if you have anything to add, please do. But Katie, let's talk about micro level. How do you advocate for yourself on that micro level?
My favorite word is boundaries. Boundaries. One of the best ways that you can voice what you need, voice what what your ideal state is, whatever that may be, while protecting yourself from having those things disregarded, is by setting good, healthy boundaries. And I think, a lot of times it sounds daunting, but it can be something so simple as my phone goes on do not disturb at 10 p.m. every night.
Mhm.
That's a boundary that I have. And it's a boundary that I've had for quite a long time. And yet still my husband texts me from the first floor. Um, but, things like that are really super small, super simple ways that you can protect your sanity, protect your
Mhm.
wellness. Other ways are just, like having that one-on-one interaction with individuals, whether they're, somebody who's caring for your loved one, that you're sharing that burden with them, or that journey. I hate to call it a burden, that journey with them. Just having open, candid conversations and just sharing what you need and what you want. Sounds so simple.
Sounds so easy. Joan, anything to add to that?
Yeah. I tell people, I know things are bad in the greater community when the policy wonks, which I am admittedly one of them, start getting calls
Mm,
from desperate family members
mm,
or sometimes individuals themselves. But talking about family members, the first thing I always do is I say to them, I'm not a treatment provider, first of all, but I'm going to sit on this phone and we are going to come up with ideas. I'm going to sit here on my computer and I'm going to look for phone numbers for you. We are going to actually do this. And then you will have my phone number to call me back. So, after I triage with them about what their situation is with their family member, the next thing, and what I always say to them before we hang up, is you also have to take care of yourself. And I
mhm,
refer them, if they're in the Cleveland area, I refer them to Katie's shop. And I
mhm.
say, NAMI, are you aware of NAMI? Here's NAMI's structure, national, state, local. Here's the number and the website for the local NAMI. You need to take care of yourself. You need to reach out to NAMI. And I always use the example of, it's like when you're on an airplane and you're traveling with a little kid. They tell you if the oxygen masks come down, you have to put yours on first. You have to do that, because if you are not of use to your child is not going to benefit. You have to breathe first and then put the mask on your child. And I can hear the it's not relief. It's this usually a sigh or an out, air comes out when people
Mhm.
hear that, oh yeah, I need to take care of myself too. And sometimes I'll get a, yeah, I know you're right, and the fatigue then comes out. I can hear it, the fatigue, the terror, all of those things. But it is so true that unless you do the boundaries that Katie talked about, unless you put your oxygen mask on, unless you get the help for yourself, you will be of very little value to your loved one that you are trying to care for. The other thing that I would say is, and I do this for our organization, and I've talked to my board about this through the years. If we are at full tilt as an organization, we are already at 100%. And I would say a caregiver is like at 150%,
Oh,
but
yeah.
we'll use that analogy. If our organization is 100% and somebody comes knocking on my door and says, Joan, we really need the MAC to help us with this issue, I then go through a triage of sorts. What is
Mhm.
it that they want me to do? And what level of commitment is it going to take from us? And if it's going to take a certain amount, is it going to take away from something else I'm doing? So
Mm.
the analysis that I use, and if it is going to take away from something else, is it worth it? Can we devote the resources to that? So I always think about things that I'm involved in as an organization. And I think this holds personally true too, as a triage of sorts. Can I just support what's going on? Like, I'll sign my name to a letter now that we've all said we hate letter writing. Well, Jenny didn't, but I'll sign our name to a letter. That takes like zero other than me just pushing the
Mhm.
email that says, yep, we'll sign on. I didn't write it. I believe it, but I didn't even have to think about it. But I'll sign my name onto it. And then the next one is, does it require some level of action that I will have to do? Maybe it's minimal, maybe it's a little bit more, but that's also going to take away from something else I'm doing. So I have to triage kind of that level. Is that it? Do I want to do that? And then the third kind of highest level is, do they want me to lead on this? Am I going to have to be the leader on this? And if so, what else am I going to have to get rid of? And that's kind of how I live my life generally too. And I think it's just a helpful way to think through, what is it how much skin is going to come out of my game for this, whatever it is, and then begin to assess, is this something I want to give that much skin to? Because caregivers just don't have much left in their bandwidth. So if you're going to give to something else, make sure it's worth it. Make sure it's what you want to be doing. And that you keep your oxygen mask on.
Wow, great. Katie, yeah.
I was just going to say, no is a full sentence, right? I think we get so caught up. People who are in that caregiver role just want to help everybody to their own detriment. And no is a full sentence.
Yeah, Joan ended up talking about boundaries too. I mean, making those decisions about what's going to serve you or how much skin you can put in that game makes a lot of sense. That's actually a perfect segue to our next question, but I have a mini soapbox for a second too, since Katie kind of introduced that concept for this talk. I really, again, to me, part of advocating for yourself is finding a therapist or finding a peer that you can really trust, sit back with, recharge yourself for, again, this kind of work. You also need support as you're doing the hard things. So this again, perfect segue. So we hear, we just did this. So this whole talk kind of sprung from our curriculum. We added an advocacy week this week this year in our curriculum. And I was like, yeah, everyone's be so psyched. And not that people weren't psyched, but some of the feedback was, advocacy is something that can contribute to our burnout because it's so overwhelming to advocate for a loved one. Again, working within that system that isn't even there, that isn't even built yet. So overwhelming to advocate for your loved one, overwhelming to advocate for yourself, let alone like some greater initiative like reducing mental health stigma. So what are ways caregivers can support themselves as they advocate for others? And let's see, why don't we start with Katie and then move to Joan, and then Joan will finish up on the next question.
It's endless. You talked about having those trusted individuals, those people who I call them bucket fillers. They fill your bucket. They don't take out of your bucket. And we all have people that do both of those roles in our lives. And it's a matter of balancing your interactions with those people and making sure that you're with the fillers more than you are with the takers. I think no is a complete sentence. Part of self-care, self-preservation is taking the time to say, I can't put one more thing on my calendar. Or I can't even imagine being out of my house for 15 hours straight. Like whatever that may look like, it's okay to say no. I always like to say, I can't do it this time, but keep me in mind for next time.
Yeah.
They can come back and ask again. And I think it's so important, to just take care of yourself and take those moments of silence and solitude wherever you happen to find it, whether it's in your bathroom with the door shut or in the woods, whatever that looks like, just identifying it and adding it into your day in a permanent way, not in a fly by the seat of my pants. Oh, I forgot to breathe kind of way that you are. It almost becomes natural to have those parts in your life.
Oh, excellent. Joan, anything to add here? How do you take care of yourself while advocating? How do you take care of yourself while advocating? If you don't mind.
Not as well as I should, candidly. I don't know that, I won't say that anybody does, but I think I have the older I've gotten, I think the better I am at self-advocacy. And Katie, I love the statement, no is a full sentence. And I think that for years and years and years, that was not a full sentence I would use. And I think that as an advocate, the challenge for that is I go back to welcome to the world of small nonprofits. You are chief cook and bottle washer, which means you are working, 60, whatever, however many hours a week, a lot of them. And I realize lots of other people work harder than I do. And that I am in a very privileged place to be running this organization and doing the work I do. But self-care is something that is so critically important. And the older I've gotten, the more I've realized that, probably because I've gotten older. But it is, again, that it's not just with caregivers, but with advocates generally, putting that oxygen mask on and really triaging what do I have to do, what can I do, and what don't I need to do at all. And the world will still go on. I mean, that's the other part, is recognizing that for those things where I'm just going to sign our name onto a letter, it will go on without us being the leader. And it's easy for us to get caught up thinking, well, we've got to be out front. We've got to be leading. We've got to be. No, we don't. You know what? There are other people. We are not the only ones, thankfully, doing this. So sometimes we can let other people lead. And we're just fine with that. And we'll be there to be the cheerleaders and the supporters. But we can't always do it. We can't. And caregivers can't do that either. They just can't. Like I said, when I start getting the calls, I know things are bad out there, and I hear it in the voices. Every time I hear it in the voice that's about ready to crack, and the exhaustion that comes through. So really thinking about self-care and self-advocacy is tremendously important.
Yeah. Can you you mentioned something that was like almost 3 things, like things I can do, things I can't do, just a second ago. Can you tell me those things again? I just thought that was really insightful.
Yeah, it's the way we triage our work. And I try to kind of triage my life in the same way. Can I just support something? Write my name on the letter, be your cheerleader? I'll be on the side. I'm here. And if you need me to sign another letter, I can do it. Do you need me to kind of be in that middle area where maybe I got to do some things, but I don't have to be the leader on it? But I gotta be in a little bit more than what I was just by signing my name onto a letter. Or do you need me to be the one out front who's not only planning the attack, but leading the attack, leading the effort? Attack's a terrible word, but leading the effort. If I need to be that, then I have to look at everything else that's in my basket and figure out what's going to fall out of my basket, because my basket will only hold so many things. An individual can only hold so many things in their own basket, and an organization is the same way. So if I'm going to put, a big piece of whatever into that basket, something's got to come out. And so making that purposeful decision of what's going to come out, both professionally and personally.
Yeah, I can see that concept being extremely helpful to caregivers. So thanks for clarifying that. Tiny mini soapbox moment again. I am a person who loves poetry and literature, and even as I was thinking about this, and I hope it makes sense because I don't write poetry and literature very often, but there's this quote, and I looked it up while we were talking, from Their Eyes Were Watching God by Zora Neale Hurston. And it's there are years that ask questions and years that answer. And I think as we're thinking about advocacy, keep that in mind, that there are going to be years that you're going to sit back and go, okay, there's going to be a moment that I am going to have the energy, that I am going to be able to maybe lead more than just cheerlead. So remind yourself of that. There are always going to be challenges that we need to advocate for, and that you aren't failing if you don't go in there gangbusters leading everything, that you can have like a quiet whisper, that's your year that asks questions. Yeah. That's your years that sit. Yeah, I wish I could gives me chills, because what an amazing writer she was. So there are years that ask questions and years that answer. Keep that in mind as you're thinking about this big topic. So last bit, and this is a fun one. I don't know. As I was thinking about this, I was like, what's a good wrap up? Because advocacy can get heavy, and I think both of you are extremely smart, extremely passionate. I hope we didn't get too heavy. I don't know whether we did, but if we did, let's finish up by saying, Like, who are some of your advocacy heroes? Like when you were like a little baby social worker or a little baby whoever, like who did you go, gosh, that person looks awesome? Like who in your life or our history or community now or folks you've looked to as great advocates? And Joan, I'll start with you, and Katie, please, afterwards.
So I have 3. The first one, full disclosure, a little bit of a cuss word here. A number of years ago, I got a brand new female kitten, and I knew she was the one for me when I stuck my hand into the cage and she smacked me, because she was coming home to a big brother who is very kind and sweet and playful. No, the cat brother. But I knew she was the one. So I brought her home, and she proceeded to stand her ground against this giant other cat and chase up to him and then back off, and then chase up to him and back off. And she really just kind of laid her groundwork right there. So in trying to come up with a name for her, I thought, what can I call this little feisty, fearless kitten? So I literally, Jenny, you referenced Google. I literally put into the Google, badass women. And all these ladies came up, and I discovered one at the time that I had never heard of before. And shame on me as a social worker and a lawyer. Her name is Emmeline Pankhurst, British. And she was a political activist and a suffragette. And Time magazine named her one of the top 100 people that changed the world, or some such thing as that. She played a critical role in women in the UK getting the right to vote. So she's my first one, Emmeline. So I named my kitten Emmeline. That's her name. The second one is Dr. King. I mean, what more do you need to say? When I think of advocate, leader, inspiration, I think of Dr. King. And the third one, and this is from a very different perspective, relates to civil rights as well, but this one also just rocks me to my core. And this, well, it's Mamie Till Mobley, Emmett Till's mother. And the brave act that she engaged in what was undoubtedly the darkest moment of her entire life, galvanized the civil rights movement. And I think I will be forever grateful and in awe of her, and pray that I have 1 ounce, 1% of the strength and that she displayed. So I would say those 3: Emmeline Pankhurst, Dr. King, and Mamie Till Mobley.
Thank you. Excellent. Katie, who are some of your advocacy heroes?
So when we talked about this, I was like, RBG.
Yeah, that's
right. RBG. And I thought by Joan going first, she was going to take her. And thank you, Joan, for letting me have her. I think there's countless things we can attribute to Ruth Bader Ginsburg and the work that she did. And as, such a tiny woman with a lion's soul. I think, she's just for women everywhere and for human rights and for everything else that she did. She's a phenomenal human. And, the world is sad without her in it. Dan Pallotta is another person who he actually, I like him a lot because he advocates for nonprofits. His whole platform is that, we treat nonprofits as if nobody gets any profit, and that, we undervalue the work that we do. He goes on and on about the administrative costs of a nonprofit organization. And for anybody who doesn't know what that is, that's, you have to account for certain things that they say I don't know who they are, have defined as non-program related costs. And when you work lean, like the 3 of us do, everything is program related. Everything feeds the work that we do on a daily basis. So he's my jam. He has some great books. Definitely read them. Joan, I see you. Lady Gaga.
Cool.
She was, one of the first major celebrities in the music industry to really come out about her mental health and to, I can't remember the name of her foundation. But her foundation that she has around mental health is just groundbreaking, and the work that it does in the communities, granting, giving grants, providing support, all that stuff is really amazing. And then lastly, Eleanor Roosevelt. She, I am in awe of that woman on a regular basis. I don't even know who was her husband, but she, the Universal Declaration of Human Rights. Am I saying it right? Yeah, Universal Declaration of Human Rights. She was instrumental in that coming about, and played so many different roles in the United Nations and all that we know to be the things that protect our rights today and help define us as human beings that deserve respect and love and warmth and everything else.
Excellent. Wow. I have some looking up to do. I will say I Googled Lady Gaga Foundation, and first she does have actual makeup. So that comes up first, but her foundation is called Born This Way.
Yes, thank you. That's the name of her makeup line too.
Okay, gosh.
Yeah.
Looks like some great makeup too, but I would invite you to check out bornthisway.foundation to get more information about that. So, wow, we've almost filled an hour. I've been watching the chat. Christy, who's behind the scenes, has been giving some amazing resources, and I haven't seen any questions. So she is putting, again, final slide. Yeah, with some QR codes to contact these amazing women. We also have our contact information in the chat just popped up. So thank you both so much. I mean, this exceeded my expectations. It took a topic that sometimes seems really hard and nebulous, and I dare say made it a little fun and definitely hopeful. So thank you so much to the both of you, and thanks all of you for being here. Have a great evening.